Usually at this time, our friend Jeff promotes his podcast. This time, however, he wants you to hear this and hear it very well. Black Lives Matter. The protests continue. Now is the time for committed, concerted action to end white supremacy and abolish any police force that engages in brutality and profiling, which is pretty much all of them. If you don't know what to do to help, I can help you. Google Support Black Lives Matter in my area. Talk to friends. Go on Twitter. Now is the time to fight. We welcome you. If you would like to hear a discussion about this topic featuring Black voices, listen to the most recent episode of Everything is Awesome, called We're Fed Up, by following the link in the show notes. Long days and pleasant nights. This is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 6, Episode 9, Night Terrors. In this episode, a child, who is really an alien, has a cupboard that's really a horror movie, and he's turning people into dolls? I'm not sure I get this one, but good for him. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
And I'm Jamie.
Okay, so this was I think this was a swing and a miss for me.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
This is a really strange, it started off really well. I was very into the whole, spooky setting and having it be, the spookiness in a apartment building, it's almost tenement housing. And just the overall creepiness of living someplace like this, I think that rings very true for a lot of us and is something that oftentimes is overlooked in favor of big Victorian spooky houses. And so we start off with that. We have the doctor and Amy and Rory responding to the call and going from door to door in a very funny, I thought, montage. And I was really on board. But once we reached the middle and I realized what was going on with this kid, I was confused enough that they really started to lose me. And then by the end where it was well, you have to make sure that you let him know that you don't reject him, even though he's not really a human child. I mean, I understand the premise there, but I don't feel like it's fair necessarily. It's a weird. I just don't really. I don't know. I don't know about this one, folks. That's all I'm saying.
This one was written by Mark Gatiss, who.
Oh, okay.
You might remember from the Lazarus experiment and his crazy dancing as he turned into a monster.
So that's two swings and a miss then for Mark Gatiss. I don't know about that, kids. It's just.
Well, he didn't write that one. He just played that character.
I thought that you said that he also wrote it.
Did he? I have to go back.
Or maybe I'm thinking of another one, because didn't he write another one?
He has. Let me see what else he's written. But it popped up on the screen. I didn't notice it the other times I watched this, and I was like, oh, interesting that he wrote this.
But yeah, so it just, for this episode for me, I just sort of felt like it was a lot of potential was there. And I was pretty into the concept initially. And I mean, nothing is really creepier than children's themed things. Mm-hmm. haunted toys and spooky children's laughter and the whole like idea of corrupted children is always going to be very freaky. So I am absolutely behind that in concept. But it was what it all wound up being that sort of let me down. So I didn't hate the episode. It just didn't sustain itself.
Yeah.
I guess is the way to say it.
He has written 9 episodes of Doctor Who. He wrote The Unquiet Dead, which was the Charles Dickens episode.
Okay.
He wrote The Idiot's Lantern, which was the Rose's Face Taken Off episode.
Rose's face taken off?
TV like took her face off.
Oh, right. God, I forgot about that.
He wrote
right.
He wrote Victory of the Daleks, which was the Winston Churchill World War II Dalek episode from last season.
Okay.
And then this one. And everything else is future.
Okay.
So he's a weirdo.
Yeah, so this is not your favorite either, you said.
No, it's not.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. I just want to know, I want reassurance sometimes that I'm not being unfairly harsh on an episode. So I find it like sort of encouraging when I find out that other people feel a similar way.
Yeah.
Or that like the crowd opinion tends to agree. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's some good stuff in this performance wise, but this episode itself doesn't mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of there.
Indeed. Okay, so let's start from the beginning, I suppose. We start off with a sort of montage of pretty much just like life in this apartment complex. And that's what I mean when I say that I liked where this all started off. These images are very everyday, but they are kind of spooky in their way. You know, we have the people sort of like, at the very, very beginning, we start off with just like the look at all of these places being pretty much identical and indistinguishable from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the slowly swing, which is a very like, are you afraid of the dark kind of moment. We have the shadows of kids through like one of the windows, and on the stairwell, we have an old woman who's like lugging her little rolling shopper up the stairs and getting into the elevator. This lady is familiar to me. I'm going to click on her and see what she's done. Oh, she was in Harry Potter. I wonder who she was in Harry Potter. She was in Sorcerer's Stone and in The Witches. Dope. And she's apparently in season 12 of Doctor Who also.
Hold on, I'm going to look her up. That's the one who gets sucked into the trash bags, right?
Yeah, Mrs. Rossiter.
Yeah. Let's see.
But yeah, so all of this for me really starts off feeling like pretty legit. It's a really good setup. I do feel pretty flipped out by it personally. It's not something that's like outright scary, but it has a sort of atmosphere to it that I think just really gets your head in the right place. And then we meet the kid who is sitting on his bed, obviously really frightened for some reason. And as we begin to learn more about him, what sort of we come to learn is that he's a bit of an anxious child who is afraid of everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense to him of just having this like low-level anxiety that occasionally jumps to high-level anxiety. And for no particular reason that his parents can see. And he has this moment with his mother as she's leaving for work where he says that he doesn't like the sound of the lift. And she says, where do we put things we don't like? We put them in the cupboard. And she says, he says, you have to do the thing, Mom. So she has to turn the light on 5 times and off 5 times. And it sort of feels like an obsessive compulsive thing initially, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And he begins, as she leaves, to whisper to himself, please save me from the monsters. And he says it in such an impassioned way that it apparently gets through to the doctor in an alert that pops up on his psychic paper in his pocket. He sort of jumps as if it, like, you know, stung him or vibrated or something. And we see him as his parents are talking in the next room about what to do about him. He is running his flashlight from the bed over all of the stuff in his room. And it's really just not a good idea to let a child have a flashlight, kids. Like, that is the shadows of everything are just scary. They just are. It doesn't matter if the thing is actually threatening. It feels really spooky. And as a full-ass grown adult, when I take walks in my neighborhood at night, I will have the light play such tricks on me. And I know perfectly well that it's just in my head or just a trick of the light. It does not matter. It does not matter at all. Like, it gets under your skin, you know?
Yeah.
You start to, like, have these moments of jumpiness, and you know you're being silly, and it doesn't, you can't talk yourself down from that sort of instinctive gut reaction. You can't stop your body from having this, like, physiological response to a thing. It just isn't possible to undo that. You can, after the fact, tell yourself, oh, I'm just being silly. But it doesn't change how you felt for a second when you saw the thing. So I just really, as this kid keeps, like, this episode is very heavy on that flashlight imagery. And I just wanted somebody to take that goddamn flashlight away. I feel like that would take care of 50% of the problem right there. It's just not worth it.
Just leave the light on.
Right? If that's the problem, let him sleep with the light on. It's okay, you know? But anyway, so the doctor gets the message, and they head over to this apartment complex, and we have the series of minor interviews with various neighbors as they try to find out who it is that needs their help. They are all... The TARDIS was able to bring them to the complex, but not zero in on exactly where in this complex the person is. And it's pretty funny. There's the moment with Rory as he faces off against the landlord with his fucking dog. Man, that landlord. Don't you just want to scrub him?
Yeah.
He just needs a shower so bad.
Yeah,
Man.
It's pretty gross.
Oh, it's real bad. And then Amy has, like, those fucking creepy twins.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that reveal of there being a second one, like, behind the door, and the way that she's just like, correct. Yeah. That's the correct response. And the doctor, he is up against the old lady that we see later, Miss Rossiter, and she is very worried about the bins because she has bad knees and, just old lady things.
Mm-hmm.
The older I get, the more I realize how our world just does not give any fucks if you have trouble. Like, nothing is set up to be easy for you. Good luck, friend. And I'm not looking forward to getting old when this is going to, or, God forbid, should something happen to me. But we have not got an accessible world. And
nope.
It is I see things like this and there's a part of me that wants to be like, sucks for old ladies. And then I have to really stop and look at that and be like, no. Really, it does. It sucks.
She, in Harry Potter, she was uncredited as Neville's grandmother in the first movie.
Oh, that's delightful. Okay. So then we get a brief moment, and I don't remember the kid's name or his dad's name.
His name is George.
Right.
His dad's name, I don't know offhand.
I'm trying to find it here, but it doesn't look like it's listed.
Alex.
Alex?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Claire is the mom.
Okay. So yeah, Alex is... I was really pleased by this, that they had it be the mom who goes to work and Alex who has to deal with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just so often not the way that we set things up. When there's a child problem, it's the mom.
Right. Yeah.
And I like how much he clearly loves his kid and is like interested in helping, because there is definitely an unfortunate stereotype about kids who need extra attention and help being seen as a drag, especially by the father, because the mother is the one that's so understanding and the dad is the one that's just frustrated and why can't he just be normal?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the father is frustrated, but it's not like at the child. He wants to be able to help and he just doesn't know what to do. So that's a very understandable place to be. And I just was glad to see that they weren't sort of doing that same old thing there. And the doctor comes in and says that he is from social services.
Well, Alex assumes he's from social services because Claire had said she was going to call them to see if they could get any help. And the doctor just sort of goes along with that and is like, call me the doctor. My name is the doctor. Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy how slowly Alex eventually is just like, you're not from social services, are you? Like, and the way he says it and how and he's very aggressive about getting the doctor to try and leave the house, which, like, as much as we know that the doctor is there to help and is probably the only person that can help in this sort of situation, if you think about it as somebody who is here to cause trouble and lied about who they are and is in your home, I really appreciated how forceful Alex was willing to be and how he isn't like a coward. He isn't just sort of like, he isn't avoiding confrontation here. He gets up in the doctor's face and like slams the fridge door shut and takes the stuff out of his hands as he's trying to make tea and is like, no, I said leave. It's unfortunate then that when he is confronted by the landlord, Purcell, that he then sort of crumbles. And this landlord, I said it once already. I mean, he needs a good scrub. Like, his dog is cleaner than him, 100%. But he's very good at doing that sort of like threatening indirectly so that there's plausible deniability about it. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's something that I think is like a lot of people, when you tell a story later about the way somebody behaved with you, and you try and explain a situation like this, it will often sound like you are getting upset about nothing or exaggerating, because it is all about the atmosphere in the moment, and nobody really understands what it felt like to be cornered and like have this indirect threat of this dog that's like, just kind of in your face. I thought this was really well done. And it just makes me think of like the stories that women tell of a guy being really aggressive or threatening, and how they won't want to tell anybody about it because they know what it sounds like versus what it actually felt and looked like. Like if you were standing next to her, you would be like, hey, what the fuck is your problem? But you hear about it afterwards and you're kind of like, yeah, I mean, that sounds like shitty, but I mean, what can you do?
Yeah, language is wonderful in that way, that you can use really innocuous phrasing. And it all comes down to how it's said.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what is said.
Yeah.
Like, there used to be like a typical sitcom joke that, in the stereotype of how women reacted to men in sitcoms so often, where they'd be like, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Which doesn't help any of us in the real world when we're trying to like, no, you don't understand. It's not what they said, it's the way they said it. Like, oh, really? You're so hysterical. It's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like that scene was kind of remarkable to me, honestly, because this show has a lot of people's lives being threatened on a regular basis. And yet I felt a lot more tension in that scene than I have in many of the others, where I would arguably need to be a little bit more worried. But I was much more worried for this dad in his own living room with a fucking human being than I was facing off against monsters and aliens and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just, I thought that was well done. So, let's see. I'm trying to see what, oh, right. So when the doctors, as he's like going into the apartment, Rory and Amy have gotten into the elevator later on, or at the same time, actually. And they're talking about how they're not really sure, whether this call that the doctor got, well, Rory really, he says maybe it was junk mail. To which I'm just like, Rory, whatever has you thinking that's even like possible? What a weird assumption and suggestion to make that could happen. What are you talking about? I don't understand. And they get into the elevator, and all of a sudden the elevator just drops. And this is, so the elevator is supposed to, this is part of where I started to get confused. The premise is that the kid's bothered by the elevator and so has kind of put the elevator in his cupboard. Is that right?
Yeah. The sound of the
when
elevator,
they get into the elevator, they get put into his cupboard because it's already there for him.
Yes. Basically, the sound of the elevator scares him. And so he hears that while also there's this person in his house. And he's already freaked out. Maybe he's not even concerned about the doctor yet, but he's really freaked out by everything. And he's like panicking in his bedroom alone, imagining things everywhere. Plus, he heard Rory, as Rory walked by his window, he said, maybe we should just let the monsters eat him.
Right. Why, Rory?
So
don't do
they
it.
get in the elevator and the kid is like, please save me from the monsters. And that triggers like this whole thing to happen where they end up plummeting and in the dollhouse.
Yeah, I really loved the design of the dollhouse stuff, by the way. Uh-oh.
It's my friend Alyssa. It's fine. Hopefully it's not
Okay.
an emergency. I'll call her back.
Oh, right, because was thinking that you were waiting for a call, but it turned out that was nothing. I forgot about that earlier. So they wind up in the dollhouse, but it takes a while for them to like figure out what's happening. Meanwhile, the old lady who is frightening the kid because of her breathing, is that right?
Yeah.
She also winds up in the cupboard?
Yeah.
That just really seems unfair.
There's also something said somewhere, I can't remember who said it, that he thinks the lady across the way is a witch.
Is that her?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Rude.
This kid is a mess of anxiety.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, like kid, I get it. Same. But you can't just start sticking everybody in this thing. But, you know, that's what he's been told to do. So what can you do? So yeah, she goes out to like take out the garbage. And she gets sucked down into the dollhouse from like the garbage area.
Which doesn't exactly make sense, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't really make sense either that the landlord gets sucked down through the floor of his own apartment.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Like, that's not really... But it's fine. I mean, it's a very cool visual to see his feet get stuck in the floor like this is Nightmare on Elm Street. So, I'm fine with that. The one problem that I had with the way that the old lady went down was that it doesn't, like, you hear something moving around in the trash when you're like living in the city, and you're just going to assume that that's a rat or a raccoon.
I thought about that too. Like, what do you think is in there? You think it's a kid playing a prank on you or something? Like, it's a fucking animal, probably.
Yeah, it was just a weird thing to have her just assume. Oh yeah, obviously the little kid of the neighborhood is hiding in the garbage bags. Like, why would you think that? It's a weird moment. But yeah, so she winds up getting sucked down, and then we have the like explanation or the long like sort of drawn out. Oh my god, I love when Alex is explaining to the doctor about how many anxieties and fears this kid has. And the doctor says, or he says he hates crayons, and the doctor with real feelings says, understandable. In this way, like, fucking crayons have personally done something to him that he really can't forgive. And I just find that hilarious.
And when he says it's called pantsophobia, and he's like, that's not a fear of pants. That's a whole different thing.
I like that because I know that word from Peanuts.
Huh.
There's like, I can't remember if it's like one of the Christmas specials or what, but it's Lucy at her little like pay a nickel and get therapy, and he's asking about like, well, he doesn't know what's wrong, he just seems to be afraid of things all the time, and she names like 6 different fears, and he's like, I don't know, is there something that just doesn't quite seem right? And she says, maybe it's pantophobia. Do you think you have pantophobia? What's pantophobia? And she just yells, the fear of everything! And he goes, whoop, and flips over backwards on his little stool, because that's what he does.
It reminds me of that, as I often can relate something to an episode of Friends. They're playing a game, and Joey's like auditioning for to be a game show host. And one of the questions, because he's trying out this game with Ross and Chandler, is what is the meaning of triskaidekaphobia? And Ross is like, the fear of Triscuits!
Oh my god.
And he's like, no, it's the fear of the number 13. And then Chandler's like, the fear of Triscuits? And Ross is like, they have very sharp edges. Which is true.
I mean, if I'm coming up with sharp-edged foods, I don't know that that's the thing that I'm going to think of first.
What would be the thing you think of first?
I I think everybody will agree with me when I say Captain Crunch. Captain Crunch.
Yeah, that'll
so sharp. It's bananas that is like allowed to be out on the market.
It will rip the roof of your mouth apart.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
That's the only cereal that you pour the milk and then you wait a minute.
Yeah.
You don't eat that shit right away. It's dangerous. Mm-mm. All right. So we go into the dollhouse, except we don't yet know it's a dollhouse yet. And as soon as Amy picks up the copper pan that's wood that's only painted to look like copper, I was like, oh shit, does he have a dollhouse? And then she finds like a lantern, and it's got this really cool, like, oversized bulb in it. And that, for me, was confirmation. I was like, oh shit, yep, they are in a dollhouse for sure. But it looks really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. Like, it's sort of like a Christmas decoration somehow, you know?
The clock that only has the hands painted on.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked when the doctor and Alex are finally in there, and it's like a wooden chicken and I don't know, was that supposed to be a lemon or a squash? Big yellow.
Oh, I don't remember that.
You'll have to take a look at it when we get to that part. And like all of these like wooden plates and stuff, it's really cute.
And Amy finds a glass eye in one of the drawers, which I really enjoy how like timid she is about touching it, because in the world that they live in, they have run into actual eyeballs just on their own. So there's a real precedent for being weird about touching this, you know? Otherwise, I would be tempted to be like, come on, guys. But no, this is a fucking legit thing to be like, oh, God, okay, I'm going to touch it. Everybody, psych yourself up for it a little bit, you know? Like,
Can I give you a piece of trivia that might make you analyze Amy a little bit differently?
Oh, okay.
This episode was originally supposed to be the 4th episode of the series, but it was moved to the second half of the season because Stephen Moffat felt that the first half was already a little too dark. That meant that they had to change some minor details. So really, when Karen Gillan filmed this episode, she was performing as the Ganger version of Amy.
Oh. So when you say that might give me a different insight into her,
like it might make you look at it a little bit differently, that like she's Amy, but she's not Amy. I learned this after the fact. There was nothing, and I mean, by after the fact, I mean, I learned this today. So when I watched this episode again today, this morning, I wasn't seeing anything unusual about her behavior. And then when I read this, I was like, So I wonder if there's certain things that you can pick out, knowing that, like, at least when she, as an actress, filmed this, she had a different motivation for her character.
I'm wondering, like, what that do you think, like, when you watched it knowing that?
I haven't watched it knowing that. That's my point.
Oh, you found out after watching it even this time. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, like I watched the episode and then I went and like gathered all of my trivia, and that's when I learned it, and I was like, interesting, because nothing about her behavior stood out to me as unusual for Amy, which is kind of the point. We weren't supposed to know that it wasn't Amy. Yeah,
because even with that, like, I don't remember any moment that I particularly was like, that seems weird. Why is she acting like that?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So they were planning on having it take a lot longer for them to even realize who she was.
I think that they just shuffled episodes a little bit. So instead of this being episode 4, I think, because also I think the doctor's wife was supposed to happen at that was supposed to happen in a different season. So there was just some movement of like these standalone episodes so that the first half of the season wouldn't be so heavy, because it ends, remember that this season was split. It ends on such a note where you're like, wait, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, first we find out that hasn't been Amy, and then we find out that River is their daughter and what is happening. And so if this had been, it just would have been a real downer of a first half of a season.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there was supposed to be a scene in here, or there was originally a scene shot where Amy sees the lady with the eye patch in this dollhouse too. And then the line at the end when the doctor says, "It's so good to be all back together again in the flesh," which is referring to her having recently been turned into a doll, but it also was applying to her being a ganger because he's like starting to notice things and figure some things out. But we didn't know that if this had aired in order at episode 4, we wouldn't have any indication yet that he was looking into that.
So he was supposed to have known what flesh was, even?
He was, yeah. He, like, the whole reason that he brought them to that island was to study it and to figure it out so that he could turn off the tracking on Amy.
Right. Okay. Right.
So
I remember that now.
He's known for a while before we find out that that's not Amy.
Gotcha. Okay. Huh. Interesting. I wonder, like, does it seem weird that he already knew what flesh was?
No.
Like,
he knows what all kinds of things are.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I would have liked to see him figure that out rather than know already.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like,
it's not like a big deal.
Yeah,
but...
like having those 2 episodes where they are dealing with the flesh and then him putting it together, like something has been off about her.
Yeah.
And then he puts it together, but instead he already knew. It's just that we didn't know.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so just trying to figure out. Oh, so the thing with Rory's flashlight turning on and off 5 times in mimicry of like the turning on the light switch on and off. What is that supposed to signify?
I don't know. It's just because this whole thing was created by George.
Right.
And he needs the light to be turned on and off 5 times for it to feel safe. It's sort of...
So it's just to feel safe. It's not necessarily to send something into the cupboard?
No.
Okay. I think that's sort of what I was thinking, was that it was like the catalyst, like pushing the button. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Because then when the doctor and Alex are in there, Alex notices that the candles all light up. There's 5 candles and they light 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And
right.
He says this is something that George does. Like things have to be turned on and off 5 times. So it's like some little piece of his psyche or his anxiety. It's all tied together. So the 5 things happening in 5s, on and off in 5, seems to be just for George all together. It's part of his fear. It's attached.
Gotcha.
It's attached to his fear.
Right. Okay. So this is when they begin to hear like the kids laughing, the children's laughter.
Yeah, hate it.
What exactly are these kids in here?
They're called peg dolls, is what it says in the notes that
when they're drawn on the front of a clothespin.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
I was going to look it up.
Find this. Because you know those clothes pegs that are very, you don't squeeze them. There's no spring. They're just a piece of wood that's carved with like a sort of you look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about.
They look like little people. You remember Fisher Price Little People?
Mm-hmm. I think that might have been based on that idea.
Yeah, because like when I'm very old, when I was a kid, my little people were made out of wood and painted. And then by the time my brothers were born, all the new little people were plastic. And these pictures that when I just Googled it, they look like little people from Fisher Price.
Mm-hmm.
They do not look like these dolls in this show.
No, not really. And like, is every doll in there? Have they all been a person?
I don't know if they all have been or if one started out and then started making people that George was sending into the dollhouse into other dolls. I don't know. That's never explained. Somebody seriously made peg dolls of the Harry Potter characters.
Of course.
And then it looks like all of the DC characters. Nope, because that's Captain America. So, and that's the Hulk. A bunch of comic book characters.
Oh, I'm looking at peg dolls now, but these are not what I was thinking. I was thinking clothespin dolls, but these are not clothespin dolls. Never mind. I was thinking a whole other thing. The pegs are like much. It does not look like they have another function other than being a canvas to make a little figurine out of.
Yeah. So, but that's what the notes call them, peg dolls. Like said, Amy turned into a peg doll, but whatever those crazy, creepy ass doll creatures were, it's like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm not.
What happened?
I just looked up clothespin dolls, and yeah, that is also a thing, but it's not. The peg dolls is like the regular one seems to be like much more common, and like the dolls in this do not have the painted on hair.
Yeah, no, they have crazy
they have, like,
ass
wigs.
So I put in Peg Dolls Doctor Who, and it brings up a bunch of images from this episode. But what I want to know is, what is it based on?
Oh yeah, the little head wig. Aw, that's so cute. Yeah, let's see. Peg Dolls Doctor Who. I want to see what, because they are. Yeah, they're carved. Their faces are carved, and that is not actually what they look like.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is like more of an antique peg doll.
I hate it. Whatever it is, I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's really freaky because they have the faces be like really small in the center of the head.
Mm-hmm.
And the hair will start like weirdly far back on the head so that the hairline is like receding. And that somehow makes it look sort of sinister, like the hair has been falling out in like as if it's rotting almost.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at like a picture from the production and the way, like how much bigger they are than the people on the set, because I think that they've got like some they might be on like platform shoes or something. God, they are really creepy though. This would be a really good thing to cosplay.
No.
Yeah, because like even their arms are too long because they have obviously their hands are holding on to the elongated part of the arm so that the arms are a little bit too long and the fingertips are reaching like around the knees or like slightly past the knees, which gives the whole thing this weird unbalanced look, you know?
I
don't appreciate any of this.
I don't want to look at them anymore. So, like, you're making me want to go and look at, because I don't have the picture, like, I don't watch the episode along with us talking. So that would mean I'd have to go back to that Google page and look at them again. I don't want to.
Here, I'll copy the link to this photo that I'm talking about, and you can just look at this one. Because the arms are just weirdly long. And I feel like that adds a really nice, like, how did I just send you the same exact link that I sent? Like, I said copy link address, guys. Come on. Help me out here.
This crazy house. Speaking of.
But the arms are, I feel like that kind of thing is a nice touch to make things just seem wrong, but not quite wrong enough to get your attention right away.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You need a minute, you know?
I hate these things so much.
Yeah, they're very I
hate it. I'm sorry. I had to close
God.
it.
What just happened?
It was a very visceral reaction. I hate it.
Did you listen to the episode, I think it was of Dresden Files, where Rashawn gets startled by a moth?
No.
Oh my god, she yelled into the microphone. God damn. That
happened with Krista once when we were recording for Lost, where she, like, there was a moth or something, some kind of bug in her house, and she fucking lost her mind. I had to cut a lot of it out because she literally was, like, screaming. Because she has such a fear of bugs.
I also really, like, there are times where I am able to impress myself a little bit at how level-headed I remain when I find a bug on me, but that is the exception to the rule. I do not usually do super well around a bug. I do not like them. I don't like being startled by them, especially when you think, like, you just have a little hair on you, and you just reach over to brush the hair off, and then all of a sudden your fucking fingers touch a live thing that begins to sort of wriggle. Oh, God. Just fucking kill me. Sorry. Anyway.
That just made it so much worse. The word wriggle.
I mean, it does, though. Right? Like, that's what it is. So the doctor is trying to tell George not to worry about the cupboard. There is nothing to worry about in the cupboard. Everything is fine. And he holds up his sonic screwdriver in order to assess it. And he kind of pulls back very abruptly and says, off the scale, it's off the scale, it's off the scale, it's off the scale. And I really enjoyed his reaction. And I like, too, when he's about to open the cupboard. But the first time when Alex is still in the room and the landlord knocks on the door and startles them both. And even Alex, who, like, does not know that the supernatural is real yet, he has not encountered this yet, he is still having this, like, he still jumps, you know, in reaction to somebody knocking on the door. He's getting spooked despite himself. So we have the confrontation between the doctor between Alex and Purcell going on as the doctor investigates this cabinet a little bit more. And then Purcell leaves after threatening and being like, I need my fucking money. And the doctor insists on making tea, even though Alex is like, you just made my son even more scared. What the fuck are you doing? This is really irresponsible. We came to you for help. You have only made it worse. What the fuck? And finally, the doctor says, I need you to talk to me about the night that your son was born. And he's like, yeah, it was the best night of my... And just falls off. And the doctor looks at him like, yeah, what happened exactly that night? Because you said that he was born on Christmas, but this photo that's at, like, what, Halloween? Something like that?
No.
Your wife isn't even pregnant, right?
The picture is from Christmas, but George was born in January.
Okay, right. So, yeah, his wife isn't even pregnant. How does that make sense? And he kind of, like, rattles Alex until eventually Alex blurts out, of course, because Claire can't have kids. And the doctor just stares at him and he's like, wait, how did I forget that? And the doctor's like, yeah, see, the thing is, he is not your biological child. He's an alien. And there is a perception filter to make you think that you remember his birth, even though it didn't happen. And I don't remember what the alien type is that this kid is supposed to be.
It is a Testra? Tenzo.
Testra?
A Tenza.
Tenza. Okay. Who basically adapts and becomes whatever they need to in order to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to be taken care of, he had to become a child because he could sense that Claire really wanted a child, or both of them did.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate Alex flipping out about this. The whole thing is just, what a weird thing to have. Claire's not pregnant. His acting here, the way that he stumbles into saying the truth by accident and how he stops, like the words didn't even make sense as they came out of his mouth. I just thought he was surprisingly effective here at something that's sort of like ludicrous, but he makes it a rather emotional moment of just, oh my God, my life is a lie,
Mm-hmm.
So poor little George, the alien boy, sees that this guy is realizing that George isn't his actual son. And he begins to freak out, thinking that Alex is going to reject him because he isn't. And he sends Alex and the doctor into the cupboard. It's unclear whether he knows he's doing this at this point. Does he?
I'm not sure. It is unclear.
Everything in the room begins to shake, and he sort of looks around as if it's like a surprise to him as well that this is happening. And I can't tell if he's like so fully adapted to pretending to be a little boy that he actually is thinking like a little boy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how complete is that? Because this doesn't, the way that the doctor treats this in the end, he doesn't seem to see this as a deception.
The kid, like, to him, he's a kid. This alien has basically created himself into what they needed, which was a child. Right. So, like, yeah, he's an alien, but it's not like he's on purpose deceiving them. He believes he's a child.
Right.
So he actually is scared. And I don't think that he actually knows that he's sending the doctor and his father into this cupboard. He's just scared. And he's scared that he's going to be sent away. And so, like, it seems like almost like this stuff just happens out of his fear, not because he's directing it into the box.
Okay. So they get shoved into the fucking dollhouse.
Mm-hmm.
As Amy and Rory are finally seeing these creepy dolls moving and giggling and saying, "Where are you going? We want to play." And eventually they catch up with them and grab Amy. And watching them be turned into these dolls is very upsetting. There's something about their heads becoming wood, and the way that effect is done that makes it sort of look like something is breaking its way out of their skull. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, I do not care for that one bit. And like, honestly, I am a little bit saddened that the landlord gets away. I would have really enjoyed it if he had been... Oh, God, I'm looking at it happening right now. I guess it's like the cap, the lace cap that winds up on Amy's head, and that really looks like her brain is coming out through her skull. But I would have liked it if the landlord had just stayed inside the dollhouse forever. I would have been fine with that. So Alex, who was looking at this, is realizing that the little lights are, 5 times they are going on and then off. And the doctor is like, "Oh, okay. You tell him to put stuff that scares him in the cupboard. Anything scary he puts in here, the doll's house. Scary noises like the lift. Even his own rituals have been part of it, a psychic repository for all his fears." I don't totally get how the light switching, turning on and off is part of his fears. Like,
it's how
that he
he
puts, because it makes him feel safe.
Yeah, it's how he deals with his fears, but yeah, I don't know.
But they are sitting there figuring this out when one of the dolls comes out and begins to come at them. The doctor tries to use his screwdriver on it. I've got to invent something that works for wood. It's embarrassing. I love how he gets out a giant pair of pinking shears.
I love the giant scissors. Love. And I love the detail that they are pinking shears.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just your average scissors in there. They are...
That would have been too useful.
Yeah. They look like safety scissors for children.
Yep.
And they've got the little jagged teeth for cutting cloth.
And they, like, this whole thing, like, can pretty much be boiled down to keep the dolls away from us so that they don't turn us into them, and shout for George to please let us out. And George, it seems like, is really trying to figure out a way to help, but doesn't really know what he has done to start this. So it's difficult to get, like, him on the same page with all the rest of them. The doctor is figuring out what set George off, because obviously something in particular happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he figures out that it's them asking for a doctor, and that him being worried that they were going to reject him, that he was going to be taken away from them. And then eventually finding out that he's not actually their biological child. Like, nail in the coffin there.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know what the fuck Alex says to Claire about this. Because, like, does he remember?
Don't know.
Like, I am not certain whether this perception filter kicks back into work once this crisis is averted, and he goes back to thinking that this is his actual kid, or if it's just he has to sort of, like, live knowing this now and keep it secret from his wife.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
I feel like there has to be a point when the fact that the kid isn't biologically related to them comes up. Like, I don't know if it's how much this alien creature can mimic things. Like, can it mimic DNA? Can it, if they take blood and they're trying to, like, figure out some sort of, like, genetic link for some reason, would that show up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would like to know that sort of thing. How, because it's one thing for this kid that's an alien that, like, automatically sort of becomes something that other people want. If we go with the assumption that the deception isn't really purposeful, that it's simply a survival mechanism, which I'm willing to accept that, then we have to, like, we assume that this is sort of an automatic thing. He doesn't do this, like, out of malice, or even it's just self-preservation. If that's true, that's a different thing than Alex continuing to lie to his wife about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if he has to, I understand that decision. I'm not mad at him for that. But it does feel different. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, what would you do? Would you tell?
Yes. I'm not a very good liar.
And how do you tell your spouse who was not there for any of this. Something like that.
I don't know. Hey, so while you were at work last night, we had a little adventure.
Yeah.
We ended up inside the dollhouse. Our kid's an alien. But
I just, like, she comes home later and we see them together. And they are all right. Like, she's just kind of like, oh, wow, just like that, he's fine now? And Alex seems to kind of just be like, yup. I guess he's planning on just going with that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't have an answer for you.
Anyway, I'm not, like I said, I'm not making like a judgment on keeping that secret, because what do you do otherwise? You try and explain this shit and then sound like a lunatic and then and then what happens? You have to try and prove that what you're saying is true, which
how do you prove that?
Exactly. Like, that just doesn't feel like, especially if it turns out it can replicate DNA. Then you just, I don't know. Then you might actually be deemed unsafe to be around the child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I found this whole like thing sort of fascinating at the end, of just being like, God damn, I really don't know what to say here. What would be the right thing to do? But in like, I'm glad for the kid's parents, because they obviously were super worried about him, and they seem to be very loving people who just want the best for him, And I'm trying to think how the rest of this episode ends, because he like tells his son, no matter what, you are my son and I would never ever give you up.
Yeah.
And then the doctor leaves and says that he might come back around puberty, because that's always a funny time.
Yep.
And the doctor leaves and goes and sits between Amy and Rory. It's good to be all back together again in the flesh. The doctor asks, where do you want to go? And she says, my mind's gone blank. I have just been turned into a wooden dolly. I like them being called dollies. There's something about that that's funny.
It also feels very Scottish to call it a dolly.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that makes sense. And as they're talking about where to go, there's the spooky children singing again.
Yep.
They're saying like it's tough being given 3 wishes of the whole universe. And then the singing starts and they say, tick tock goes the clock, the cradle man, he rocked her. Tick tock goes the clock, even for the doctor. And then we see the little death date thing pop up. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
So,
I'm glad we're past it. I was never a huge fan of this episode. It always just kind of felt like, why is this here? There's gotta be better stories we can tell. It's not a bad episode. It's not like, what was one of the really bad ones?
Oh, God. The one where he's Jesus, or the doctor's Jesus. That one's the one that I hate the most. That was really the one where I was starting to be like, what are you doing, guys? I got like mad about it.
It's like, it's not a bad episode, but it's also not a good episode. It's just really mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't give me a lot of like there's not a lot of meat there to really dig into. And then like you have pointed out, there's lots of little questions of like, how do you have this conversation? What happens next? Why did certain things happen? And it's just all like a shrug, like,
yeah. Like I said, it's a shame whenever something starts off with a really strong atmosphere and then kind of doesn't seem to be able, like, what it really feels like is somebody had a really cool idea, but they didn't actually sit down and like map it out.
Yeah. There was something in there. The doctor mentions 3 of his favorite bedtime stories as a child. They are The Three Little Suntarans, The Emperor Dalek's New Clothes, and Snow White and the 7 Keys to Doomsday.
I guess.
Sure. The doctor finds a hatred of clowns understandable, so thank you, sir, for that.
And crayons.
Is it crayons? Or was it clowns? It
said crayons in the subtitles. Oh, boy.
I thought he said crayons, too. And so
that's when the doctor says understandable.
Okay, because I copied this piece of trivia and I was like, I don't remember them talking about clowns, but sometimes Matt Smith talks really fast and I don't catch everything. So maybe...
It was the dad who said crayons.
You're right. But I also, sometimes Matt Smith talks really fast and I don't catch everything.
That's true.
So I copied it because I was like, sure. I mean, I agree. Clowns are terrible. Also, there is something about the subtitles. He says, while he's making tea, the doctor says, you see these eyes? They're old eyes. But the subtitles apparently said all lies.
That's what, and when he said that, I was like, what the fuck does that mean? But I just sort of...
So your subtitles did say all lies?
Yeah.
Okay, no, he very much says old eyes. Because I didn't watch it with subtitles, and that was one of the few things that I didn't have to be like, wait, what?
All right, then. Noted.
And then the only other thing I have to talk about is a message that Kat left us about the aging of Time Lords. Which I guess, I think when we were talking about the Doctor's wife, because she put that in parentheses, that you might have had a question. She said, ignoring the most recent years, the Doctor is really fucking young when it comes to Time Lords. When the first Doctor regenerates, he's about 450 years old. So he had lived for 450 years already. And he dies of old age. And there's a quote, my body is wearing a bit thin. Apart from... Oh, I have to skip this part because it's a spoiler. No, wait. Apart from the Time War, the Time Lords are old fuddy-duddies and most die or regenerate of old age. So the fact that the Doctor is 900 years old and on his 11th body makes him a complete outlier, and he has no regard for his physical form. If you take an average of 13 times 400, then the Time Lords who live normal, dull lives inside the Citadel have a possible life expectancy of 5,200 years.
Okay. Interesting.
So, I guess
he's like a teenager, practically.
I mean, he's the 11th Doctor, but he's only, from what we're seeing, this body, this version has only been alive a couple years. And the first Doctor lived for 450 years before he regenerated. So, like, each version is not living as long as some of the other previous Time Lords had, where they're all, like, fucking ancient. Because they're going through all their regenerations and living, like, hundreds of years with each regeneration. So, that was interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. 5,200 years on average. That just seems like too long. Don't you think? I don't know.
I mean,
I could do about 1,000 years. I think that's my max.
Yeah, maybe after 1,000 I'd be like, okay, I'm ready now.
Yeah, I just... Yeah. Um, is there any other trivia?
Nope. And no.
All right. Well, I'm going to say hi to new patrons, and I want to apologize, guys. I've mentioned about how Patreon, like I've talked before about how they changed a thing, and they've changed it yet again and made it even more frustrating.
Yeah.
And I am probably going to say the names of some people who have been a patron and didn't sign up super recently, but I can't separate them because of the way this is set up right now. So apologies if you're like, hey, I've been a patron. I may notice that or I may not. We'll see. But I have a lot of names here. So we have Dwayne Blas, Megan Bob, what's up? Sabrina, Magnus VD, Laura Froylan, Gina O, Addison M, Kara McGraw, Bridget Bounds, Katie, Jessica Tubis, Max, Amanda Sheehan, Eliza Zoltan, Cameron Danilchuk, Brenda Shilachi? Shilatki? Ooh. Sorry, Brenda. Kenneth, James Anderson, Ingrid Bo Sather, Eric Shifa, Kaylin Magus, Irina, Justin Root, Kevin J, Brooklyn Puckett, Haley Yamada, Sean Duncan, Lauren Jones Wagner, Bransation, which is a good one. This one just says S. Jaboom, Bernadette, Martin Van Luinen, Glenn Blackwelder, Rebecca T, Derek Still, Pearl Stevens, and Jessica Miller. So welcome to all of you. Those are all the new signups since June 1st. So basically a month's worth. And thank you all so much for pledging. It's really been exciting to reach our goal for Song of Ice and Fire due to all of you newbies and a lot of people who have upped their pledges and gotten us where we needed to go because of that. I just really want you all to know how appreciated you are and that I still have like a bit of shock sometimes when I realize how big the community is getting.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget to join the Mighty Network. And of course, there's also the Facebook group, which I am not as active in anymore, but it is there. And
it's there and it's still active.
Yeah, it's still active without me.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you have questions, I recommend going to the Mighty Network, messaging me on Mighty Network, or just sending a regular email. Because I am trying to avoid Facebook because it's just a cesspool and I get angry. So, and Messenger on there is just really bloated with a lot of stuff and I don't use it often. So,
if you if you write something in the Facebook groups, I tend to check Facebook once or twice a day. So I might be able to pass on like, hey, there's a message for you. Like,
okay.
If you guys like don't want to have another, even though Mighty Network is super fun, so you should join it. But if you're like, oh, I can't with another thing, I can always get you messages or alert you to them.
Really, it's easier if you email me though.
Yeah.
If you're trying to pass it through Jamie and it's anything time sensitive,
Yeah.
Just email me. It's like,
true.
Why?
Just trying to be helpful. I'm sorry, I can't help myself, but to try to be helpful.
Because then I have to go to Facebook to answer it, and I don't want to be on there. That's the whole point. So, or you could do Twitter, which I have been on lately a little bit more, just being very aggressive because everything is a trash fire, and I have just decided to start using the show Twitter as like Black Lives Matter all goddamn day long. Mm-hmm. So if you are following me on Twitter, you already know that. And if you're following me on Instagram also, sorry. Not sorry. And yeah, Rashawn and I have just reached episode 5 on Westworld this week. So we are beginning to get into the back end of this season. we are going to cover Gattaca because somebody commissioned us to cover that. And then we will be beginning on A Song of Ice and Fire.
So probably like a month?
Mm-hmm. About a month. And don't forget that Miles and I have agreed that in one way or another, we are going to be covering Stephenie Meyer's Midnight Sun for patrons.
Is that actually happening? Like that book is
That's
actually for real?
Yep. 100%.
Wow.
So if you are not a patron, but you want to hear what we have to think about that, it is patreon.com/unspoiled. Also, Miles and I are currently covering the first book of Mistborn, which has been very good. And if you are interested in hearing us yell about how all cops are bastards and capitalism is a lie and the country needs to be razed to the ground and built again from scratch, that's where you want to go for that.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Do all of those valid points tie into stuff from the book, or is this just
very much?
Okay.
This is part of why we had to really play around with how many chapters to cover per episode, because he underestimated how much we were going to have to say based on this book being a lot about social justice and a corrupted system.
Okay.
And it's very, very relevant.
Cool.
And the sign off for the last couple of episodes, instead of Toodaloo motherfuckers, has just been fuck the police. So, that's just how it go. Don't at me, guys. You know where I stand, and I am not pushing on that one bit.
Same.
I posted about it on the main Facebook page, and somebody commented about how I thought this was a page for information about the podcast Unspooled, not some and I was like, first of all, he went on to say something about not some liberal conspiracy bullshit, and I'm like, I can't help the fact that you don't know how to read. This is not Unspooled. Apparently, I've got a lot of people following who thought Unspooled was what I am, even though my logo looks nothing like Unspooled, and I have never posted about any movies almost ever. It's all TV and books, but people just don't have a lot of common sense.
They don't. They certainly don't have reading comprehension.
No. It was just, oh my God. This guy went on a rant, too. And at first I blocked him, and then I was like, no, this is actually kind of funny. And I unblocked him just so that everybody could see what a silly comment it was. He said something about how while, you guys find it easy to say a cab while you sip your lattes and eat your arugula sandwiches or something like that. And I was just like, well, I don't even know what you're saying right now.
Right. There's no such thing as an arugula sandwich, dude.
But, I mean, there is, I'm sure, but why would you want it?
Right. I mean, I love arugula, but I don't in a salad. So he thought he was commenting on Unspooled, which is Paul Scheer's podcast, and Paul Scheer's a very famous comedian.
Mm-hmm. I get this a lot, Jamie.
I'm actually happy to know that people are just as nasty to very famous people.
Oh, yeah.
As they are to a just regular woman podcaster. Because that's Paul Scheer and I think his wife. I'm not sure. I haven't listened to Unspooled.
Same.
But I do like Paul Scheer and June Diane Raphael, who is his wife.
I can't get, I have gotten a fair amount of messages from people who have written, a full, essay refuting something that I claimed about a certain film. That's not me, guys.
You should just reach out to Paul Scheer on Twitter and be like, hey, so I have a podcast that has one letter off from yours, and I keep getting messages for you. Give me somewhere to forward them to?
I'm trying to find the comment about it. Oh man, because I really want, I would love to be able to screenshot that particular comment and be like, hey, these are your fans. They really hate arugula. I don't know why. What's the problem?
He would probably find it very funny. I'm sure his wife would find it very funny because she doesn't give a fuck.
Here it is. Okay. What idiotic page did I get involved in? I thought this was relevant to the Unspooled podcast, not a bunch of brain-dead leftist morons judging police officers and everyone else who makes this country work every day, while you useless shitbags sit back and eat watercress sandwiches and sip lattes. It's watercress. That's what it was. Oh my god. What a weird fucking hill to die on. How dare you like lattes? And greens. Okay.
How dare you eat healthy and like coffee?
Yeah.
How dare you be a person who lives in Southern California, so I'm going to stereotype you based on that.
What a weird,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. This is where I live. But, if I get some people's eyes on my stuff because they think that I'm Paul Scheer, I guess that's not terrible. That's fine.
It's not if they actually start listening to the right podcast.
Right, yeah.
Oh, you don't
right,
sound like June Diane. I'll listen anyway.
Well, thank you all again so much for listening to the show. I hope that you have enjoyed the coverage. And ACAB, hashtag arrest the cops that killed Breonna Taylor. I can't believe I still have to fucking say that.
Right.
And, yeah, Black Lives Matter. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.